It's the Delft Open Monument Day. This is where a bunch of buildings that aren't always open to the public open their doors. There are 48 of them spread all around the city, and I went to all of them over just 2 days. So one thing that added a challenge is that on Saturdays, there's this antiques market that fills up the streets quite a bit. I started at the old church and just rushed through. I can come back here and do it properly pretty much any other time. One thing that did surprise me was that there were Spanish flags up. I'm not sure what these are about. I'm sure if I read the plaques. Something else was the flea market had spread into this, which I thought was distasteful. I'm not super precious about churches, but that was odd. Anyway, I got a little notebook, and there are these flags around that make it easy. Next, I went to
You play 20 balls.
Rotary Club type thing. They had this narrow bowling, and I only got one ball to hit pins. Next, I went to a church that had a slightly more ornate ceiling, and the windows on this side were boarded up, not on this side. I asked if they had been boarded up as part of a renovation, was told no, but I don't think they really understood what I was asking. This is a women's house associated with that church. It's pretty much just a old building. It's full of pretty modern offices. One thing that's neat in a bunch of things are these name lists, with names going right back to the 1400s. This is a hidden church. It used to be inside a factory or something, because the specific denomination here was persecuted at the time. Now there's a beautiful gate to enter it, and it is in need of some repair, so it's being turned into a community center or something by a group that's raising money to do some renovations that are much needed. I do love how radiators are tucked in everywhere here. This is the new church, probably the main landmark of Delft. And again, I pretty much just rushed in and out, planning to do this justice some other time. But I did find this chicken and this cowboy hat that I'm not really sure why this was here, but there you go. Something that I did not anticipate would take me as much time as it has is just finding the entrances. So this is the building I'm looking for, but this door doesn't work. Even the old church was like this. I did 2 laps around it just trying to figure out how to get in. That's often weird side entrances they use. This is I walked all up and down an alley trying to get in, and I never actually got in, so that's why there's an asterisk beside this one. This is the Delft Institute of Water. Again, it's just an old building with pretty modern Zoom-enabled offices inside. This is something I really love, but gets samey. Window from when it was part of the Technical University, and being a water place, I was curious, and the urinals are water-free. Also, the fires apparently are water-free. I found this just random police car with donuts in the window. This was kind of odd. And then, yeah, you're greeted with these toxic signs at this, again, just old building that's been turned into a modern office. This is the headquarters of a trucking company. They had Delft ware with their trucks on it, which I thought was kind of cool. And this is their main hall with some glass overhead. That's the reason that we came to this building. I, on my way back, got stuck on the wrong side of this bridge and just decided to sit and enjoy watching it. There's a shocking amount of commercial traffic that goes through these canals. In this case, I'm not sure what this boat was. It was too big to be just tourists, but I think it was something not commercial. This was an old carriage house associated with some mansions, I think, on the other side of the street. Now it's a little law office thing with a cool old car in it. Up next is the water tower. This is no longer a functional water tower. You can go up inside of it, and I did. The stairs feel like I'm entering a spaceship-themed IKEA. They have these like little lights, and it's all very minimalist. Eventually, the stairs get metal and awful as you go through the actual tank. And then from the roof, you have a beautiful view of the city, and you can see how quickly it turns into an industrial zone and how surrounded by residential that industrial really is. Here's just another pan over the city to enjoy. Oh, wow, what a cute town. I don't know why this has an upside-down R on the flag. And then right beside it is the former pump house, which has been converted into a gallery, I guess. This is a former pump house associated with the water tower, and they've renovated it into, I guess, what is now a gallery space or event space or something. Anyway, you can see some of the concrete is obviously as old as the rest, but a lot is obviously contemporary, including some of the more interesting arches and stuff, benches around all the edges. I think that's all contemporary. I wish they'd kept something, just a giant pump in the middle of the room or something, especially if it was one of those beautiful snail shell-looking ones. Anyway, this is the radius. I still don't know why the R is upside down. You can see this wall chopped out that betrays what I said about the benches being new. Anyway, and then I went to this former yeast factory, I think this was. It's now a restaurant, and I didn't want to film inside because people were just enjoying their meals, but very cool building nonetheless. They also had this beautiful wrought iron gate. This was on the other side of that industrial zone. And then this Lutheran church that I spent a lot of time in because it got trapped by the rain. I did climb all the way up into the clock tower on what were some of the narrowest, flimsiest ladders that I've ever climbed, and I've climbed some flimsy ladders, so that's saying something. A star got chopped, and here's all the inner workings of the clock. I have made it to the top. It's a incredibly tight fit. There's a bell here, and if it goes off, I think I'll be deafened. I'm gonna head back down now. Pretty neat seeing that tick away. Anyway, and then I've got to fit through this hole, which is about the same width I am, so it's the width. I'm touching both sides. It is tidy. Weather has not improved a lot. I got some lunch, and by the time I was done, things were dry again. This is the offices of the duo. This is upstairs above some PhD apartments. It's still a old-ish style electrical engineering lab with the benches and everything, and then the other side is just a little conference room. Up next is the Center for Geodesy, I guess. This is mining / surveying equipment. A lot of cool old stuff, and among them I spotted this thing from Marconi, Canada, which is interesting. And up on the roof there was a telescope aimed at all of the antenna on building 36, and of course this sort of much more modern, it's just plugged in with a wallboard. Yeah, telescope here. This was used for calculating Dutch time. This was sort of a backup in case something happened at Leiden. They really only used the Leiden time, but at one point there was plans to use both. This church was built during the Second World War, which I find surprising. It's a bit barren for that reason, but has pretty cool architecture. And this is apparently part of an electric heating system that sits underneath the sort of zone up here, altar, whatever you call this. I don't know what that tower is. It's pretty prominent, but I couldn't figure it out. This is the office of a company here that I gather does something related to airports, maybe? Anyway, it's this Paris-proof building, so it's supposed to be this like second most environmentally friendly building. It's a former TU Delft building, so here's the mining stained glass window. This is sort of the main auditorium, PhD defense zone, cool, brutalist building on the TU Delft campus. A much better example of brutalism, certainly, than Toronto's Turkey. That auditorium is also exploiting the wedge shape that is created by the sort of overhang, and in a way that it's actually functional. It's not just purely decorative turkeyness. I love it a lot. This is just the most beautiful building. I'll get it when it's not raining. Some more shots outside. This thing is that auditorium. Next is the East Port, or East Door, I guess. It's just a house on the inside that's obviously occupied by some sort of musician or something. There was instruments and stuff around. Here's a flag of Delft and a view of Delft. What a cool place to be. It was odd just traipsing around somebody's kitchen, though. More strange plumbing, and then perhaps even stranger, this mysterious assembly. Okay, next we go to City Hall. This is much busier than I was expecting, frankly. There was just people milling around everywhere, and again, I was pretty much just in and out because I'm sure that they'll get a better opportunity to see this. They had the parties of, like, city councilors displayed on their name tags, which I thought was odd. I don't think of city councilors as being associated with parties. And right behind it is the weighing house. This is like a scale house they use to weigh cheese, I guess. I spent a lot of time filming these spiral staircases. Nearly every site had them, and I thought it would make the coolest film ever. And it just did not. None of them worked. They're all just disorienting and awful. Anyway, this is just a restaurant, so again, I'm just going to come back here sometime and get a proper meal and actually take it all in when I'm not sort of rushing around. Again, trying to film these spiral staircases, and it's just always disorienting. Look, I even went up and tried to get another shot because I thought this would just be so cool. I'd have so many spiral staircases. They had it on every site. Anyway, this building's facade is completely under construction, so that's no good. This is the Kornbörse, which, grain market, I guess, grain stock exchange. The basement is this bar area that's set up for students, and then you can go up into an attic, which is even more just sort of student, smells like beer and piss. Anyway, it is barely after 5, and I had clearly overstayed my welcome. They really roll up the carpets and put up the cats here as soon as something's done. Anyway, I got 23 done today. But that was with spending about 2.5 hours hiding in my apartment getting lunch. And I also got a few difficult ones that were a bit out of the way, so I won't have to go, all the way sort of far north, far south again. That said, there's still a couple, like one that's on the side of the train station side of town that is going to be a bit out of the way, so I'm cautiously optimistic. Hopefully there's not so much pounding rain, or hopefully I just have the resolve to put up with it. Anyway, here's to day 1 of the open monument day. Okay, day 2 is upon us. There's supposed to be no rain all day. I've got rainproof Sharpie anyway, and I've got a very specific list in a very specific order where I'm taking into account when things open, when things close, and trying to avoid too much doubling back on myself. But let's go. Started at the Royal Delft Museum. This is the porcelain factory that sort of makes the only modern Delftware still in Delft. All this is porcelain. Each one of these pillars was its own different style of porcelain covering it, which is cool. And there's a bunch of sculptures and stuff in the back. I really rushed through this again, though. It was just because it was open at 10, and one of the few things it was. And it was quite far away, so I wanted to bike all the way out here, see it, and then just basically bike straight back. I'm going to do this properly some other time. Yeah, also on this end of town is the TU Delft Horticultural Garden, which also had some cool sculptures and stuff around. And these flowers that I don't think were part of it, they were just sprouting out of the ground. There were some greenhouses, and there were even some succulents and things that didn't want rain, so they were covered, which I thought was kind of funny. They had all of these endangered plants, and they were all planted in different substrates, which was interesting. And there was also just a chunk of road here, so that was kind of fun. Yeah, just a cool winding plant that I saw, and some bananas, and then this, I assume this is heating in hindsight. I couldn't figure out what these fins were, and then there was these valves. I think it's just used to heat it probably in the winter. Yeast cells, which cracked me up. So I'm biking past this building, which I now know is priding itself on being the most environmentally friendly building, and I can't help but notice that all of the windows are boarded up. Which I'm now wondering if is part of this environmentally friendliness, and I don't know if I love that. Now for the Moulin This is a windmill. The stairs are incredibly steep and narrow. It was all shockingly quiet. I think my microphone's making it seem louder than it seemed in person. Like, you can obviously feel how powerful it is with everything creaking, but it's not as sort of like clangy or whatever as I think. And now obviously I've gone and captured sort of this crane reversing and the weird way they use this clutch to do that. But this is used to lift the grain up into sort of the top hopper area. There we go. You can see where bags of grain would be hoisted up. Just some people collecting stuff. So this is a mansion and they had this...
Nee, dat klopt ook wel. Je mag dat inderdaad niet doen. Maar u komt hier zomaar binnen. Je moet van tevoren een afspraak maken.
Afspraken maken? Jullie zitten hier met papiertjes te tekenen. Afspraakjes maken.
Yeah, they had this play going on that I didn't understand, so I'm sure I'd get more of it. I think it was mostly for the kids, and there was a lot of people dressed up and walking around, so it was a lot of fun. Drew a big crowd. Next is this sort of old-fashioned candy shop. It felt a little bit like home sometimes. Another just sort of like old-fashioned house. This one was associated with a church, I guess. This is just some footage I took biking around. I left my camera rolling, and I thought it sort of showed how easy it was to sort of just lock and fire off. This reminded me of the Red Shed. Again, this is a sort of like hobby museum, I guess. Or not even just hobbies, like all kinds of workshops. Like there was giant brakes and stuff in here, but just a lot of old tools and cool stuff that, again, I rushed through way too much. I'm going to have to come back sometime and really take it all in. This is one of 2 rowing clubs that I went to. This one was obviously the better funded of the 2. It had excellent facilities, this cool little tunnel that went under. So this one was sort of more out in the suburbs, and yeah. And there was this, I think it was a hospital museum or something. I'm not really sure what it was, but it seemed to have some medical-related stuff. Hannibal Lecter mask. And then this was a little community theater. They were doing a show, but I didn't want to film that. They had the water meter weirdly inside, and from the roof of it, you could see a really cool view of the new church. So that was fun. This is me leaving that and heading to the Delft Brew House. This is, this cellar, I guess, is the oldest in the city or in the broader area. Again, I plan to come back here. It's just a normal restaurant that's open all the time. So they have something like 13 beers on tap. There's the big lineup for the show thing. And then here is the old Catholic church. These walls are, I think, also porcelain or plaster maybe. And then they're just, one of the most glorious interiors, certainly, of any of the churches, which is like saying something because there's no shortage. However, one thing that I thought was interesting in an odd way was they've painted fake windows on up here, which is an interesting choice. And then the Arsenal, I really rushed down to get to this one because it had weird hours. It was only open like 1 to 4. And it turns out it was just a hotel lobby area. There was some interesting elements left of the original architecture, but most of it was just modern. I felt like I was walking around inside a Best Western. Anyway, here's an old sign from before it was a university. And then this is the other rowing club. This one is a student-run rowing club. You can see the Geodesy Dome over there. A lot of boats. But yeah, the interior of this is, again, has that energy of these student-owned and run and maintained places. Here is the offices of Duo again, and then this VAC workhouse. I think this is just a co-working space or maybe an architecture firm or some combination. Anyway, and then we went to this cemetery. Again, I didn't feel like filming too much of the inside of this, just felt disrespectful, but cool building again. This is like an art thing. Here's another painting of the Royals. there's just a bunch of studios for artists in here, and you could stick your head in and see what they're doing. But again, it felt like shouldn't have been filming in there. A little too intimate. And then here is another church. I'm trying to remember where this one is. Oh, it's not the one I was thinking of. Okay. So I'm getting ahead of myself again. Okay, another old name list. Again, I think this was an old building that was again used for things. This is a synagogue, and they were very welcoming, telling us that they're hosting other events all the time. This museum was among the most Delfted out. So there were these Delftware tiles and just the straight up Delftware. It's shockingly not played up as much as I thought it would be. Yeah, these tiles and things like this around, like it's not as displayed all over the place as I was expecting. This is another sort of student house thing. This notch taken out of this beam was interesting. Again, it's just pubs and stuff. It was cool to me that they had this piece of stained glass, and then the bottom floor of this was just a giant soup kitchen looking thing. Interesting, a lot of these student houses were right along the sort of like most touristy street. So I think a lot of people who came to Delft and didn't creep out to the suburbs got a lot of what I think were some of the least impressive things to see there. I have made it, but just barely. I've got half an hour to try to find the last one. It's on Corn Market Street, which is just one over, so I think I'm safe. I've got 40 minutes to do one more, so I think I made it. I've glossed over a few there. Oops. I put the names up so we can Google later if we want. Yeah, there's a pharmacy museum, and I guess these creepy heads used to be the way that you would indicate a pharmacy before people were literate. So, weird.